Good evening. I will now call the City of Cannon Falls City Council meeting for Tuesday, June the 20th to order. And when Ron gets over there, we'll have roll call.
Here.
Here.
Yeah.
Here. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second City Council meeting for June. At this time, the chair will take a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Motion by Ken, second by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. That moves us on to public input this evening. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the minutes, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to speak on anything not on the agenda? Seeing as no one wishes to speak, we will move on to item 6. We have a presentation from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation by Mr. Tim Penny.
Thank you very much. I've got a packet of materials. I'll read it at your leisure.
Thank you.
Remarks briefly. Again, Tim Penny, the president of the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. Thanks for the opportunity to be here to present again about the work of our foundation in our southern Minnesota region. We serve a 20-county region, everything basically south of the suburbs to the Iowa border, and as far west as New Ulm and Fairmont. Back in my political life, that was kind of my old congressional district, and loved representing that district. Just got fed up with Washington, and so 10 years ago, I was approached to take the job as president of this foundation. I'm glad I did. We do 3 things. We invest in early childhood, roughly $2 million a year that we invest in a variety of early childhood programming. That includes 20 AmeriCorps slots that we hire, and we place them primarily in early childhood sites. We have roughly 40,000 books that we secure from Capstone and Abdo, 2 regional publishing companies, and invest those in Kiwanis clubs and other and libraries and community groups and others that are doing reading programs for preschool-aged children. We also have a grant program that's dedicated to early childhood needs, a Building Blocks loan program to help early childhood providers in that regard. And we also do a lot of early childhood provider trainings across the region to help them with their business success, but also to help them with academic instruction so they can do a better job with these kids, get them ready for kindergarten. We invest roughly $3 million a year in small business startup loans and some grant making on economic development activity. We have 25, 30 of these loans that we issue every year, often either on referral from a bank or partnership with a bank. And we also have a small equity fund. Actually, we had an equity fund committee meeting early today where we looked at 4 investment opportunities for new businesses that are eager to start here in the southern Minnesota region. We have a small equity fund, so we always do those equity investments in partnership with other equity groups in the region, including Ignites in Red Wing, which is an equity meetup that brings in some of the same clients we're looking at, and then local investors get an opportunity to invest in those. We've also partnered on some of these investments with Rochester Area Economic Development, which is not just Rochester, it's the broader region, as well as the Mayo Medical Ventures Investment Funds. So we're looking for investment partners for those across the region. In part of our entrepreneurial work, we've really gotten fully engaged in the last 5 or 6 years in local foods, because we think that's a real opportunity for South Central, Southeastern Minnesota. We have a lot of regional centers here. We're close to the Twin Cities. Frankly, we've got a lot of local food producers and processors, many of whom want to go beyond the farmer's market and really turn that into a successful business. So we reached out and found other partners in the region to join a collaborative to kind of focus on things that we think can grow the local food entrepreneurship of our region. That culminated in the creation of the Local Foods Feast Festival that we co-sponsor with others down in Rochester Civic Center between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We have about 100 exhibitors at that event every year, about 40 institutional buyers, restaurants, grocery stores, others that come and sample this stuff. And about 1,700 visitors came through the event last December. So it gets bigger and better every year we do it. Ferndale Farms is always there exhibiting. Dave Maroney is there with several folks in the immediate Cannon Falls area that are in the local foods realm, and I think it's a good opportunity for them to kind of advertise your community in that regard. The last thing we do is we help small towns create community funds. Because we believe that's a way they can take local assets and invest them in the future of that town. And we currently have 26 small towns under our umbrella. Every year we get a couple additional towns that approach us to help them create community funds and then manage the funds on their behalf. So that's the third area of work that we engage in. And in relationship to that, starting in the fall, we're creating a brand new small town grant program, which will be available. What's your population here? I should have looked at the sign on the way into town. Just under the wire for 5,000 and under. So this will be a grant program that would only be available for towns under 5,000 in our region, because we really want to take more of our resources and make sure that they're getting dedicated to the smaller towns in our region on programs and projects that are important to those towns and their future. John Peterson from Ferndale is on our board of directors. We try to have people from across the region with different backgrounds and different perspectives to help us shape the work of our foundation, and delighted that he came on board about a year ago. He's been a great new addition to our board. So with that, I don't really have any other reports to make except to just remind you that in this packet there's information about our different programs. There's also information about specific grants within the last couple of years that we've made here in Goodhue County. Other than the partnership on local foods, there hasn't been a lot of direct investment into Cannon Falls in the last few years, but we really view economies as regional. So if we're working with Ignites and Red Wing, there's some benefit that can grow to the county as a whole because of those investments. But I also think that we know Dave Maroney pretty well, and when there are opportunities here in town and he thinks that we've got anything to bring to the table, he's always good about reaching out to us. He's been a great partner.
Thanks. Anybody got questions or anything for Tim?
No, thank you.
So with that, I'll hit the road.
Thanks,
so
Tim.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you for your time.
All right, that moves us on to the consent agenda. Items on this area of the agenda may be adopted, or they may be removed and placed on the business area of the agenda for discussion purposes before approving. For those at home, I'll read the consent agenda. Item A is the just and correct claims for the accounting period ending June the 15th, 2017. Item B, Resolution 2286, approving a variance for 501 Covell Street West. Item C, Resolution 2287, approving a conditional use permit for George on the Rocks, LLC. And item D, approve bid to replace the retaining wall. And are there any items anybody wishes to bring down? If not, the chair will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
And second by Cedar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. That moves us on to council business this evening. The first thing is the corrected meeting minutes for the May 16th, 2017 City Council meeting. Ron?
Yeah, you had, Councilmember Abity had brought up the motion on page 14. It was about the third paragraph down where Abity had, or actually Councilmember Carpenter brought it to our attention, but that Councilmember Abity made the motion and made the second according to the minutes. That, of course, was inaccurate. Sarah checked Linnell's notes, and it was, as is noted in the new minutes, I believe, I don't have them open here, but
Wasn't
I
you.
believe it was Abity and Mattson.
You lied.
So, just looking for approval on those minutes as amended.
So moved, but I will not second it.
I have a motion by Cedar and a second by Mike to approve the meeting minutes from the May 16th City Council meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. That moves us on to item B, school request for city contribution of tennis courts. Tom?
Do you want to do it? Do you want me to do it?
I'll pass this to Cedar. She's been on the meeting. She's got a little more information than I do.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. So as residents of Cannon Falls know, the city does not itself have its own tennis courts. Back in the 1999-2000 timeframe, we let our tennis courts sort of go and joined forces with the school to construct some new tennis courts that are the ones that are present today on the CFHS campus. And those are open to the public. And my understanding is that they are well used and well loved by the public, in addition to, of course, providing a venue for sporting teams, boys and girls tennis, and other gym-related activities. So those courts have fallen into disrepair over the years. They have not been resurfaced for a period of now 10 years. There are some subfloor issues that have caused some cracking and some dangerous conditions, so that half of the 8 courts are now, at this point, too dangerous to be used for any purpose. Without some intervention, the teams would be compelled to play all their matches away for all of next year. Given that there are only 5 teams in our conference, I think, that have tennis, those are matches that would entail considerable distances, usually. So the school and the district have been looking for solutions. We started in earnest, or at least the conversations that I began being a part of, and the public works that I knew about, became aware of, were started in April. At that point, the school's proposal was to completely reconstruct all 8 courts, and the price tag on that was quite high. It was about $288,000. Since that time, they have been able to locate a contractor who has a different system for resurfacing and to fill the cracks and to come up with a resurfacing solution that looks like it would be sustainable for some period of time. There's no guarantee, but my understanding is that it's very rare that a contractor is going to guarantee this no matter what in an outdoor context, mixed sort of use place. So the district and the facilities folks at the district feel confident that this is a viable alternative, and the price tag on this is $75,000. The school had earmarked $65,000 after the sale of the Westito property a couple years back. Since that time, $20,000 found its home in a different project, so the school has $45,000 set aside. So there's a difference of $30,000 there to make up. There is a timeliness concern on this one. There's an urgency. If the project is not undertaken soon, there won't be time to do any practices. There won't be a season here in Cannon Falls. So that is why we met with interested persons and representatives of the district, the school board, and the superintendent at the Public Works meeting just before now, and we heard concerns and the thoughts of the folks who have a stake in this, including community members. And the Public Works Commission then had a moment to develop our suggested contribution. So there's a $30,000 gap between what the school already had and what they need. The fire department has committed to $2,500, which pares that down a bit. Our recommendation would be that the city contribute in some measure to this project. The amount that we considered and discussed before this, which is, I guess, our recommendation subject to council approval, would be $5,000 to help pare down the gap. What I heard at the school board meeting that I attended, there was a special meeting called on this subject last Wednesday, which I attended, is that there are a number of community members and sport-related, but also just folks that would be interested in doing fundraising. And that the school does have some money set aside to do some paving projects that they could kind of crib from, but they would need to replenish that, of course, because that would mean their parking lots don't. So it's not without difficulty, but they recognize both we and the district have to be responsible with the way that we're spending money. So that's kind of the story. So the Public Works Commission would recommend a donation upon the district entering its contract with the contractor, right? Once they committed to doing it this year, then we would make funds available up to the amount that the council approved, and recommendation would be $5,000. Have I accurately done that, guys? Okay.
If we were to make it $7,500, that'd be $10,000. They just have to come up with 20, which would help them out. I mean,
Yes. Yep. Yes.
if the council would be willing to do that, I think we could find that in the budget to possibly do a little more. I mean, I think 7,500 would help them out. I mean, with the fire department and the others, I think it may, and any other fundraising might help
Yeah,
the school out a little bit more. I know it's tight for everybody, but
that's a great suggestion.
I would like to say something about it, Robbie, is I went up to school after I heard about all this and walked the courts and looked them over. The good news is, what I seen, it's not as bad as it seems. The good news is it's actually repairable up there. The bad news is some of these problems that have happened is because of neglect, where when you have that volume of blacktop and you get that amount of rain on there and you don't keep the cracks closed up, then the moisture gets down there, and of course that's where you're going to have problems. So I totally understand the government part of it. Maintenance wants to spend money and staff doesn't have it, but I will tell you, after looking at it, and one of the staff members came out when I was out there and talked to me about it, the cool thing is that if you walk that court, it's cracked, and part of the problem of the cracks is that they never put expansion joints in it when they built it. But the cracks are level cracks, and they're very easy to fill and resurface and just take care of. So I told them at that time I didn't like the idea of rebuilding it, because actually there's very little dipping or caving or anything like that. It's just plain cracked. The big concern I have is that, to me, I looked at it that we probably should have 2 tennis courts, so we're probably a fourth responsible for this. I also looked at it that I asked a staff member why we have 8 courts. It seems kind of crazy to me for a school of our size to have 8 courts, but they said that's what you have to have your school tournaments and stuff like that. So I totally understand, and I just felt that I thought we should help them out. I also thought that if I could get kids to spend 2 hours with a tennis racket in their hand instead of an iPad or a cell phone, then whatever money we spend is really well worth it. So I told a staff member that I think we should be responsible for a couple courts, but I also said that you need to do your maintenance every fall and seal them cracks, because that's where the problem is coming in. But I also feel that we should donate more, because I do feel we're going to get 7 to 10 years out of it if they're going to do this. And I sure don't like the idea of being a part of 230,000 or whatever that is. So I'm perfectly open to the council throwing 15,000 at this thing. I mean, we built a temporary driveway out here for 20,000. I think we can help the school with this situation. Thank you.
Well, it's up to the council on what they want to do, but
Yeah.
we gotta make sure it fits within the budget. I mean, as far
Yes,
as what
we
we've
do.
got to do. I
Yes,
mean,
we do. And we just raised water rates last week,
Well,
and
we did
so
have
I'm mindful of that.
180,000 excess in the budget last year with our audit.
I thought we
I
went
think
over
we're
that.
okay on that end.
So I would make a motion to allocate the amount of $7,500 to, as a contribution to the resurfacing of the tennis courts in Cannon Falls.
have a motion by Cedar to appropriate $7,500 to the school for repair of the tennis courts.
I'll second it.
Have a second by Ken. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
I would like to see it higher. I'd like to see it at 11.
is this something that we could revisit, if they're struggling, they just can't find that extra $5,000 or whatever to put them over the edges, so we can revisit perhaps?
Well, but they're going to do the job. They're going to do it. And so they're going to then well, okay, you're right. The school will determine whether or not they're going to do it. But unless we pay all of it, the city's not going to be the one that's going to push them over the edge, because none of their fundraising is going to get off the ground in the time that it takes for them to have to start the project. If they're going to do it, it would be either this July or all the way next July, right? So when are you gonna revisit it?
Maybe when the project's done. I don't know. I just want to keep it open to give more if we decide we
Yeah,
want.
and I like that too, Mike.
Okay.
I like that. I like that idea. And part of the reason we're dealing with this tonight is because if they don't move on this fairly fast, they're not gonna get it done for this school year. So I think it's important to give our support and move ahead, but also to maybe leave it open at the end.
Have you checked into grants available for something, a project like that?
Well, they have checked in. Yeah, come on up and tell them what you, there's grants available.
My name is Paul Norstead. I just want to make sure that we know that it's not just a high school thing, that I'm a tennis player and there's no place to play in Cannon Falls right now. So there's a lot of I want you to make sure that you know that it's not just the high school team. Obviously, I'm here for the high school team, but we're missing out on a lot of people playing tennis right now that are going out of town. They're playing in Hastings and Red Wing right now, making that drive because Cannon Falls does not have tennis. And so I like your discussion, but I just want to make sure that you know that it shouldn't solely be based on the high school team. That's a big factor, and obviously I represent that as well, but I'd love to play tennis tomorrow, but I'd have to go out of town. And, we tried to start a USTA adult team this year, but we couldn't because there's no court. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that it's not just for the high school use. Obviously, that's a huge factor. We don't want to be going away for all of our matches. We'd like to be playing tennis tomorrow if we could.
Paul, though, aren't the four courts to the north all right?
They're okay to drill on, but I would never have anybody play a real match on it. A ball can bounce on a crack. I could step on a crack. So we've done some drilling on there, which you can control a little bit more, but nobody is playing tennis in Cannon Falls.
The grants,
Yep, and I can talk about that
Yeah,
as well.
you do that, please.
I talked to the USTA, and I know Cedar has as well. We missed out on the grant to resurface, which is every February 15th. There's a $10,000 grant that I was told we would qualify for sure. There's a rotating national grant that we can apply for, but that takes up to 2 months because the USTA sends out their own crew to check out the courts to make sure that it's doable. So with all that process, that's 2 months away. So there were some grants that we kind of missed out on, and so do we wait for next year to get that grant and we miss out on a whole year of it, or, so that's where we're at.
The other thing, Robbie, I'd like to mention too is that I would like the school, whether the city gave $500 every fall or $250, I don't care, but they should give something that's designated to them courts to be sealed up every fall before winter comes. And whether it's just our two courts and our public works does it, I don't know. But when Mike talks about discussing it further later on, that would be one of the things I would bring up that I'd like the school to think about.
And it is, if I can go, it is something the city provided courts until we merged together. So the city was paying to resurface and maintain courts up to 17 years ago. And you made a huge donation to get those up there, and we have beautiful facilities, but the city hasn't paid for tennis courts for 17 years.
Yeah, but the school was supposed to maintain them, and they haven't.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't know, and the deal was, there was no contract, and I understand that part of it.
I
But
know
I'm
my
just-
son lived up there,
Right,
for a lot of years. If I wanted to find him, that's where I'd go get him, so you gotta go to school tomorrow, so get home.
exactly, yep, yep, so.
And I'd overemphasize too, it's not just the courts, it's the concrete in between that needs to be addressed all the time.
Yep, and
Well, certainly the district and anyone in the public can always come to the city council and bring up issues again, and we could revisit this. Absolutely. There would be no bar on that, no matter what our action was today. So,
So, I have a motion on the floor, and a second, to provide $7,500 to the school for the tennis courts with stipulation that it can be readdressed in the future if the need is there.
and that would be upon execution of the contract with the
Yeah.
contractor.
Yep. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. That brings us on to reports. Mr. Maroney? Nothing from you? Oh, gosh.
Well, I just wanted to let you guys know some of what's going on at the library. Last week, we had the National Eagle Center on Thursday. We had about 150 people in attendance, and that was right before the bike race started. There were some parking issues, but that was just kind of timing. The National Eagle Center was booked a year ago, and that was before the bike race was announced. So that was kind of one of those things that we couldn't control, but we made the best of it. And people really enjoyed it. So that was really cool. We have currently 330 kids registered for summer reading program, and they're coming in every day to fill out their reading logs and do all kinds of fun stuff. This Thursday, we have MnDOT big trucks coming to the library, so if you want any little kids to climb around on the big trucks, please bring them down. That should be at about 2 o'clock. And next Thursday, we'll have live reptiles. So if you like those, I won't be there. No, I won't. I just won't be touching them. And so basically we have summer reading going on until the 15th. And I also, library board approved last week starting a new homebound delivery service program. We're calling it Libraries on Wheels. So if we know of anybody who is a shut-in or some homebound for some reason, let them know about this program. They have to have a valid library card, and we can hook them up. And then we'll register them for the service, and then basically you get a personal book shopper who finds what you want. And then we're looking for patrons who want that, but we're also looking for volunteers who can pass a background check, who would be willing to bring the items to the patrons and sit and talk with them for a little while too. So I think it's a really great service. There are other libraries across the country that are doing it, and they have really good luck with it. And I think it's really important outreach. I am a big proponent of library outreach programs to get into the public for people. So that's my big news.
Well, thanks. Sounds like a good program.
Absolutely.
Good job, Nicole.
Yep. Tom?
I'll just briefly hit on the fact we talked about the Mill Street parking congestion at Public Works Commission. It's surfaced a couple times through the last 4 years. 4 years ago, we went to diagonal parking. We picked up 7 stalls. As you all probably know, it can be tight down there at times depending on the parking, but we also do agree that the 7 stalls are very important. We did get some information on accidents, and there's been the same amount of accidents prior to as after the diagonal, so that wasn't critical in making any decision. But as we know, parking is tight down there now, and it will probably get even tighter with the brewery open up, and I'm going to explore a couple options of maybe picking up some parking. Maybe we can get some employees to move up the street a little bit, make as much room as we can for visitors.
Hey, Tom, just a quick question, so I don't have to call you tomorrow, is one of the citizens brought up to me wondering why there isn't a stop sign down the parking lot where you go out onto Highway 19. So could you get a hold of the state and see what's going on?
We discussed this about a year ago. We got a hold of MnDOT. MnDOT said there does not have to be a parking stop sign there. That's what their response was.
So it's
Going
just,
out into 19.
Just an open intersection. If they want to just go, they can go.
Because
So
they
what-
do provide
What
sign.
happened that they took it down, or?
I don't know that's ever been there, but they do provide signage on everything that abuts up to 19 State Highway. They provide signage for, and we asked that question a few months back, and they said no, there was no need for one there. So
Wow, that's bizarre.
Hey, Tom,
Okay, thank you.
I got a question. Is there any way, that diagonal parking on Mill Street, is there any way to restrict the length of the vehicles that park down there? I've talked to firefighters and Tim, the ambulance director, and both of them said if there's, an extended cab dually pickup on either side, there's no way they can get an emergency vehicle through there.
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know what the legalities are. Maybe Joe could touch on that. I don't know what the legal.
Definitely something that we could address by signage and restricting that.
Like
One
no
thing
no
we did
oversized
that
vehicles?
Last time I talked to Greg about it, and I asked him to go to, I don't know, what is the angle on that parking? Is it like 22 degrees or what?
It was a standard angle when they set it up. Yes.
Right, and I told Greg, let's go to more of an angle, and we'd lose a couple stalls, and that was kind of the big thing at that time. if you put more angle on, they won't stick out as far, but you'll lose a couple stalls. Well, I thought it would have been worth it to lose a couple stalls, but Mike brings up a very good point that's been brought up to me about the safety of emergencies.
So if we could just include that in the conversation, that'd be awesome.
Sure.
With addressing the stop sign at the exit of the city parking lot, as we know, the state knows the statutes very well when they don't need to do something. So it'd be same as when you leave your driveway. You do have to stop before you go onto a roadway. So that's kind of my understanding of the state's position on that, why it doesn't need to be posted, so.
So I would just ask if you guys, if somebody just rolls through that, does the farmer's stop, and goes out and hits somebody and it's their fault, what's to stop them from saying there was no stop sign there?
Because the state law says that specifically there's also a sidewalk that you
Right.
must stop before every sidewalk before entering a roadway.
Right, and it seems
So-
very important to me that it should be there, you know, for you guys, just something to go by in case of an accident, you know?
Sure. Well, it's listed in the statute that you have to stop, whether there's a sign there or not, so.
So you're covered.
We're covered on it, but does it make it an issue? Apparently.
Leroy, they still make right-hand turns at the stoplight where they're
Yeah.
not supposed to,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's putting a stop sign there is not gonna change anything.
And that's the
Drives me
same issue
crazy.
that we've dealt with on that. We did have a safe North Star Grand Prix last Thursday. We did field a few complaints from people, so things that we can improve on next year. It seems to be the complaint continues to be, I didn't know about it, I didn't know the times. So there'll be a few more things that we'll just try to lock down and be specific of when those road closures are gonna be. What we like about the bike race is it preps us for the 4th of July parade. Obviously, we have 20,000 plus people coming to town, and we need to be on our A game, getting people around town, even with some of the closing that we have with that. And with the moving up of the time on the parade, that should help people get their afternoons in line to get to where they need to be, and we're looking forward to that, so that's all I got.
Mike?
Yeah, evidently Superintendent Beth Geese discovered how to text tonight, and she sent me a text message and said thank you to the city council for helping out with the tennis courts. And that's all I've got.
Nothing for me, thanks.
John?
Nothing from planning, but I'm gonna put a plug in for the Cannon Valley Fair. July 1 through 4, we're gonna have a big parade on the 4th. We're spending a lot of money on fireworks in the 4th, and this year, the 4th of July is a free day, free parking, free admission, so we'll see you at the fair. Thank you.
Leroy?
No, nothing.
Ken?
Managed to get things moving a little bit on those two parcels down by the Veterans Hall. So right now it's over in descriptions, waiting for a legal description to be written for those properties.
Okay. Good.
What about they were talking about the stripes by the fog lanes or by the, stoplights, so people wouldn't go over. The state, didn't the state or some say something that they might do it?
There was conversation that would be accepted, but it was never really followed up on. They gave a verbal indication that would be fine.
Yeah, I think they talked to Jeff about it, and he was gonna follow up, but I haven't heard anything on that part of it.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing, you put stripes in there and lines in there, then you have to ticket people. This way, it's kind of a judgment type thing. How legal is it? So, I don't know if more painted stuff is probably more complicated. I don't
Well,
know.
I know somebody had an accident. They were gonna turn, into where the mail alley, and a guy came around. Well, the insurance company found something from years ago, and so they didn't really have to pay all that much. Where if there was a line, then it's different, see? So, I don't know.
Have Jeff check into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
Anybody else?
how's the, oh no, it's what, next week is it for the dirt? Or,
Yes, we're receiving bids up until the 30th
you getting
for
any?
the compost. I am not aware of any.
Okay.
One thing, the Rotary, we got about 400 guests in town this week with the Rotary. They're actually out repairing homes and painting homes and doing projects around the city and the surrounding areas. So if you see them, welcome them to town. They're doing a good thing, and I know they're getting fed well. And but other than that, I have nothing for tonight. Everybody have a great 4th of July and go to the
One more
fair. And
thing?
John's got one more
One
thing.
thing, Tim Penny here from the Southern Minnesota Initiative. I'm sure in our packet, we're gonna see, he's gonna ask us for a donation from the city, but from firsthand experience, the Cannon Valley Fair had problems with their grandstand here a few years ago. And we structurally fixed the grandstand, but took a lot of money. But at that time, then we didn't have any money to paint it. And we went to Tim's organization. He provided us with a lot of paint, and it took a lot of paint to paint that wooden structure. But just thought I'd throw that in. It's a good deal down there.
I've been involved with Tim too, and it's really, they do some great things.
Yeah.
Nobody else has anything this evening? Chair will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.